Hi, I am Jennifer Purcell, and welcome to my podcast, Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge, where we will discuss, discover, and learn more about the challenges and triumphs of those with NLD and other learning challenges. I do have a website for this podcast, and it is called livingwithnld.com. I also have a Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter account for the podcast. They are all under the same name, which is Living with NLD. I also have a YouTube channel for the podcast, which can be found by Googling the title of the podcast, which is Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge. I would like to tell you about a nonprofit that I use for my research for this podcast. It is called the Nvld Project, and I use their blog for my research. They are a nonprofit that is based in New York and is trying to get Nvld back on the DSM, and they provide many resources for people with Nvld on their website. I'll provide you with the website for them in the podcast description. All proceeds from the ads on this podcast will be donated towards the Nvld Project. Please feel free to explore the other topics on the podcast, and hopefully you will learn something new from them. I hope you enjoy today's episodes. Also, the next Facebook chat or meta chat will be on April 16th, which is the third Saturday in April. And this is a safe space for people to talk about their issues with NLD and other learning challenges and be able to support people who are loved ones of NVLDers as well. So if you'd like to come to that, it's at 10:30 specific time zone and it goes until about 11:30. So please email me or contact me on Living with NLD on Facebook or Instagram. Again, it's specific time zone. So that would be on the West Coast, not the East Coast. And it is from about 10:30-ish to 11:30-ish. And I hope to see you there. All right. Bye. Okay, so today's episode will be the last part of my interview with Greg, who has NLD and is from the East Coast. And also, I would like for you to donate to my fundraiser for the Nvld Project. It is a fundraiser for my birthday, and the goal is $500. So far, $100 have been donated, and I also have a fundraiser going on for Ukraine to help with the invasion over there, which I find quite devastating. And something I want you to remember is that if you live in the United States, or at least not in Ukraine, you can walk away from what is happening in Ukraine. But if you live in Ukraine, and I'm sorry for those who are listening to this, my heart goes out to you and what you're going through. But it's in their own backyard. They can't walk away from it. So please help the Ukrainians out in any way you can. Thank you. I will include the fundraisers links in the podcast description. And today I am very excited to announce that BetterHelp is now sponsoring this podcast. I have had 7 years of therapy, so I know it can help change your life if you not only let it, but work on the personal goals that you set with your therapist. Without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy works. But what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles and start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in-person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist. so you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's more affordable than in-person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are the greatest asset. And special offering to listeners of Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/. I'll put in the link in the podcast description for you. That's BetterHelp, HELEP. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast. And what else I think with that, my support system that is helpful, with my brother who's 5 years older than me, that is helpful because we are similar in age. He's able to help me with things that, um, you know, it's kind of fun whenever he comes home to visit because he lives in NorCal. So it it's fun because we can relate with a lot of things, him and I, and we were best friends because we never fought growing up, which is rare with siblings.
Yeah, that's it.
So, he and I would say one of the fun things we have that I like to kind of reference in the podcast that I would say is the only aspect of him that I think is kind of common with me with NLD is that whenever we watch a video that we've both seen many times, we can rehearse lines really well back and forth to each other, and we try to do it in the character's voice. And it's fun because we get to make each other laugh and smile and connect on a common ground there.
Yeah.
So that's kind of fun with that because it's like, oh, this is something that is kind of fun that we do with each other. So do you think with NLD, is there anything that because we do have strengths with the verbal aspects and the audio aspects and some other places that you feel like you're where you have strengths or gifts in those areas?
That real basic math. So, up to like a fifth grade level, which again, not only gets me by, but helps me to excel in a lot of everyday situations. So this rote memory, and I mean like really, really, really short-term memory. It's weird. I don't completely understand my reports, but I scored like really, really well with rote memory. Like if you give me 9 numbers, it's not testing me now, but if you give me 7 numbers, I could probably recite that back to you and get it right most of the time.
I won't test you.
Okay, thanks. Because I got that anxiety piece, remember? But you ask me that, 5 minutes from now, even when I'm not anxious, I probably, won't remember it. So it's like that super, super short-term memory. And I think that's the way I've learned. Like I will literally walk around the house sometimes, be like, okay, keys, coffee mug, keys, coffee mug, keys, coffee mug. Because I know I've got that could be an ADHD issue too, but we won't go there. But I'm digressing. So yeah, really short-term rote memory, math, basic math. I've got other. I feel like I connect well with people, so I don't relate to. I know a lot of folks, maybe with NLD or on the spectrum, struggle with social situations. And I'll use a double negative. I don't not struggle in social situations at times, but my struggle is different. Like I don't quite know how to describe it. Like new people, I think it's really more of just a straight anxiety thing. But in general, I feel like I know how to connect with people. I feel like I'm pretty intuitive. Like my intuition is really good. Um, yeah, so there's a few.
Well, that's good for you that you feel like you can connect with people in social situations, and that you feel like it's easier for you in some aspects there than it might be for some people who have NLD. Because I know for me, it was, at least in the beginning, it was tricky to read some of the body language, but I did get better at that because of um, Michael Murphy's first book with NLD from the Inside Out, because he was talking about how to interpret some of the body language in
Hmm.
that book. And that helped, because it was like, oh, now I know what that body language means. Um, and
Hmm.
I also, my parents also helped me with that, because I was able, one of the things that I used to do with when I was watching TV, sometimes, well, actually, I still do this. I would pause the whatever we were watching and ask them, okay, am I reading that body language correctly? Because sometimes that would help with understanding whatever we were watching. Um,
Mm-hmm.
and if I was not reading correctly, then it'd be like, okay, you know. Um, so they were able to help me out with that piece, whether it was body language, facial expressions, uh, tone, whatever, with the nonverbal pieces. Um, and I, by doing that, I think I got better at it, because I was able to figure out what the character or actor or actress was doing in that show, and was able to kind of teach myself and be like, okay, so this is what they're doing with their tone, or their face or body. Um, and that helped, because then it made it easier for me to enjoy TV. And Now when I pause it, it's probably just asking about um, what a word means, or some political aspect of it.
Right.
But I would say my strengths probably are um, with the verbal pieces, because I found out when I took the tests that I was, with the audio piece, I, if I remember correctly, I think my percentile was like the 99th percentile, which means I did better on that um, than most people. And you know, or I scored 99% better on that than some people. And so, um, that was surprising for me, because um, just because of how high it was, I was like, wow. Um, and so if I look back at my life with the audio pieces, that makes sense, because whenever I'm listening to music or TV shows, I can usually remember them pretty easily, because um, probably because of the audio memory. Um, and like, you know, when my mom will usually ask me if when we're watching TV, if we've seen uh, the TV episode that we're watching before, because we have a smart TV. So sometimes we watch things on demand. Um, And if we have seen it before, then we'll go to something new. So that kind of helps because I'm able to, recall things a little bit better with that. Um, but I guess I can relate too with the short-term memory because I I am good at memorizing things like you were saying with the numbers, where I remember with the tests, there was a one part of it where they were having me memorize a series of numbers or groups of words,
Right.
and they would have me, I think the person who was testing me would say it to me, and then um, I think I probably said it back to her, and we would go on to a different test, and she would ask me later on
Yeah.
what she just said to me whether it was numbers or words. And for some reason, I think I was able to recall, maybe not perfectly, but probably most of them.
Huh.
Um, and I think I was surprised with that because I don't think I was ever tested on that before. And, you know, um, that's an interesting thing to do, where, like if you're trying to memorize something, um, like, a password or a combination for a computer or something. If you're good at memorization, it's easier to do it. Um,
Just real quick, I
yeah.
found one of my, I found the more recent report. So other categories I tested really well in writing samples. Apparently, whatever the writing sample was, I got a really high percentage of that. Written expression, written language. So writing. Reading, I got a 79. That shocks me. I would have guessed I would have gotten about a 21. I don't feel like I read well, but I scored fairly high. I mean, I can read, but getting the whole story, if it's not a nonfiction book or something I'm really interested in, I feel like so not all of this totally made sense, but nonetheless, apparently broad reading, math calculation skills, math facts fluency, um, broad achievement, and academic fluency. Those I all scored pretty high in, but again, especially with regards to the academic fluency or the test taking fluency, doesn't necessarily, to put it mildly, translate to performance. It's been a long time since I've been out of school, but I'm not really there thinking along those lines. But it's just a different story, how to translate some of those things into um, the workplace. So that's just going to be where my focus is the next couple of years with the 2 decades or so I have left of being out there.
Yeah, I, I I was just thinking what you were saying about the results there. I would be curious if I would to go back and try to retake all the tests that I did again. I don't know if I would do that just because of the money aspect of it,
Yeah.
but um, but if I were to do it, I would be curious just to see if the results would be any different. Um, it probably would be because of all the time that I've spent on some of them and getting better at the math and the writing, and making it easier on myself with those areas. Um, but you know, some of those pieces, like you were saying, um, they don't matter as much because y- you know we're both we're out of school, we're in the work world, so the kind of math that we have to do is different, and the writing aspect is more professional, so
Mm-hmm.
it what you have to use it for is different now.
Right.
So the results, uh, the value of the results are different. And, you know, uh, but I can see why somebody would take the tests again because they might be curious about it, and it can definitely help them when they're trying to figure out um, how to how to be successful in the working world versus the academic world. Um, so what I was also wanting to ask you is, for people out there who have NLD, what you might use as a motivation for yourself when you might get discouraged.
That is a good question. I mean, yeah, I haven't talked a lot about my faith, but in my case, my faith and Bible reading, scripture for sure is a huge component to the things I alluded to earlier that I want to be focusing on more. I can tell you all the ways I suck, but it's a lot harder, to remember that, I'm a child of God, that I'm His workmanship. His masterpiece, that sort of thing. And it's not that sort of thing. Like that's a hugely relevant thing that transcends, an LD or NLD or just so yeah. And then let's see, exercise really helps me. Just getting out there and hiking and certainly the support network, which we've talked about. Um, so yeah, there's a few things.
Yeah, I can relate to what you were saying there too, where the faith is helpful too because it can keep you grounded
Mm-hmm.
when other aspects of life might be a little chaotic, I guess you could say,
Yeah.
um, or not so organized as you may want them to be. And I would say exercising is helpful for me too. Um, and also, being able to have the support system because, you know, if you think let if there's a challenge you're working on and you don't know if you're doing really well on it, but they know you're doing really well and they pointed out to you, then that is helpful because
Mm.
having that constructive feedback, whether it's positive or negative, but especially if it's positive, then it's you're able to be like, yay, I'm doing well, better on this than I thought I was.
Yeah.
And if it's a little bit negative where you need to improve in some places, then it's helpful because then you can know where you need to improve.
I've heard
Uh,
it said that whatever we focus our minds on tends to grow.
mhm,
And
right.
that's really true. It's like what I focus on really grows, and for whatever reason, I've focused probably a little too much of late on sort of the negatives of aspects of NLD. And that's okay. A lot of it's, learning experience. I'm learning more about myself, but let's at least now focus as much on the positives and what's good. And so another thing that helps me is just, when I do it, eating right, going to bed on time, sleep hygiene. Just wanted to add those as well, but maybe someday I'll get those things down consistently.
Yeah, I would agree with you on the eating aspect and the sleeping because I know for me there was a time when in college I um, didn't eat really well. I was overeating to absorb my emotions because I wasn't comfortable with expressing them in my life. And um, I I've been able to not do that anymore because I know it's good to get your emotions out there. Um, and also being able to just be able to do that. And it just helps you have a more healthy life. And so, um, and then with the sleeping too, because that goes hand in hand with that. Um, you know, if you don't get enough sleep, it's harder to go out through your day.
Right.
Um, um, so um, one of the last questions would be, for somebody who doesn't know that they have an LD or a different learning disability, but wants to get tested, what you might tell them to, encourage the testing.
Oh yeah, I would definitely encourage them to get tested. I know that it's not always financially feasible, or it can be scary, but there's different ways to go about it. And one, I think, is to go through folk rehab. I think a lot of the state agencies are backlogged right now, but I believe a lot of them, even if, I mean, they want you to go in with a diagnosis on the one
Mhm.
hand, but on the other hand, I believe they are supposed to help you get a full battery of tests too.
Hmm.
Um, I thought, yeah, I could be wrong. It could be a state by state thing, but I
Mhm.
know somebody who's going through that process now, and it does look like she's going to be able to get a full battery of tests done. They told her to um, check with her insurance first, and essentially, if insurance is not going to pay for it, come back and we'll see what we can do, kind of thing. So it could be a gray area, but that's my second point: is assertiveness is really important if you are looking at, well, any kind of accommodations or testing to figure out if you do have NLD. And you can be politely assertive, or you can kind of be a jerk, and like in sales, they say somebody has to tell you no 3 times. So, and there's ways that you can have somebody tell you no 3 times without kind of being a jerk about it. So that's how I would um, approach that. But yes, definitely get tested, and then as you do, and also shortly thereafter, as I alluded to earlier, try to spend as much time on what's good and the positives in your life, in the world, in our country, as you do on sort of the difficulties or the negative aspects of NLD. And I'm a case in point that's easier said than done, but nonetheless, that's what I would tell somebody.
Yeah, I would agree with you with that on getting the testing done because it makes your life easier once you have that done because then you know what learning disability you have, whether that's NLD or something else, and you're able to um, educate yourself and others about it,
Mhm.
and it makes uh, your life easier and usually their life easier too.
And I think there's an acceptance, a grieving process and an acceptance process too. And
Hmm.
those things take time, and that's okay. But I guess I feel like, yeah, the sooner you can get started, the better, because I think
Hmm.
I'm going through both of those now at 48, acceptance and grieving.
Yeah, I would agree with you that also, where it's easier for you to be able to, like you were saying, accept what you have and being able to uh I guess you could say become accustomed to having it and see see what see what you have to do to adjust to it.
Hmm.
um and like you were saying, there's different ways you can go about with the testing. You can do it, like, uh, like I did with the academic pieces, or you can do with the vocational pieces. It depends on you know, I guess what age you do it at, and also what reason you're doing it for.
Right.
Um, and usually the last question I like to ask people are because I want to, end it on a positive note, is what their proudest accomplishment is in life. And it does not have to relate to NLD.
Hmm. Um, I'd say just the way I've been able to maintain and nurture friendships through the years, and how I guess I never give up, just perseverance, man. And I think a lot of us have that perseverance. So, for a while I thought, and these are all great things, like to kind of medicate, depression and anxiety for a while. I went into, a recovery program, and that was amazing. So meeting friends in recovery and working the 12 steps, first through Alcoholics Anonymous and then through a Christian program called Celebrate Recovery. Still active in the Christian recovery piece today. That's hugely helpful. And then it was, finding that group of friends, later in life at age 40 that I described. And now it's like, okay, there's the LD, the NLD piece. That's kind of like something, each step along the way, there was like one little thing missing, and I still felt like a little bit different. So I'm hoping like this is it. Like this is the one that's going to kind of put everything together. So I guess to answer the question, yeah, it's just never giving up, perseverance, and kind of being able to nurture friendships and have a group of not only support but friends from different walks of life.
Yeah, I can definitely relate to what you were saying there too, where um, with the nurturing friendships aspect, because it can be difficult for people with NLD to find good friends and to be able to have friendships, because sometimes, unfortunately, people with NLD and other learning disabilities are bullied. And um, you know when we do find good friendships and we're able to nurture them and keep them going, and be able to persevere and not give up, that is really a good thing to have. And that makes the support system really easier for us. And um, also, for me, um, I guess one accomplishment that does kind of relate to NLD is that I did graduate from college, because
Yeah.
for me, I marvel at that still, because it was harder with NLD, of course, but I was the first woman in my family to go to college and to graduate from college, so that was a little different in my family. And so that was different for me uh, than for some people. And I would say doing it with NLD made it feel more difficult. And like I think I said in the podcast before, it made it feel like a 4-year marathon. Um, so it, uh, yeah, it definitely, that is something I'm proud of. Um, so we're basically at the end here, unless there's something you want to ask me before we end the recording.
Well, I don't think so. I mean, the only question I would ask more probably for your listeners is resources, and we've talked a lot about them. There's the Nvld Project. There's a couple really good Facebook groups. If you just put in the search bar under groups, NLD or NVLD, there's a couple of really good ones there. But would you have any other suggestions for just resources for folks to connect with who are diagnosed or newly diagnosed, or wanting to connect more with others?
That's a good thing to point out. So I would agree with you to do the thing with social media. If you have Facebook, you can do what you said. And on my website for the podcast, which is livingwithnld.com, I do have a resource page on there where I offer some resources to people. And if you are on the newsletter that I send for the podcast, I also give you some resources there whenever I send that out. So I try to provide some resources for people who have NLD, or for people who know people out there with NLD.
The last thing I'll leave you with is along those lines. My counselor just gave me this. It's called Jan, for those of you who are struggling, us who are struggling with jobs. It's called the Jan Job Accommodation Network, JAN.org. It's a pretty vast website. There's a section for employers, for individuals. There's an ADA library. And right now I'm kind of reading through disability disclosure. So I'm starting a job on February 22nd in the investment industry again. And this time I'm determined to disclose, as I alluded to earlier, sooner rather than later. So it kind of gives you tips and suggestions on if, when, how, and if you're going to, how soon to disclose. So once again, Jan, I guess it's just JAN, or Ask Jan, sorry, askjan.org.
Okay. Thank you for referencing that job resource. I think it sounds like another good one out there. And I wanted to also congratulate you on the Alcoholics Anonymous, because I can imagine that probably wasn't an easy thing to go through. So
it's been a long time. I usually talk about that sooner rather than later, but yeah, so it's been 20 years, and that was a way to kind of medicate the anxiety. But in lieu of that, eliminating it, you kind of have a program to work through. You have the steps, and that helps a lot, especially when one works it. But again, there was always still that little piece, like I'm still just a little bit different. So now I found you guys. So here we are.
Yeah. So yeah, like you were saying, that one little piece that is different. And so, yeah, thank you for letting me interview you today. And
thank you.
You're welcome. And I appreciate the time with the interview. And I look forward to talking to you more. And I look forward to seeing what other people think about the podcast. And thank you for listening with the podcast. And I hope that when everybody listens to this one, that they can learn something from it as well.
Well, thanks again for having me, and thanks for all you do, and hopefully we'll chat soon.
Thank you.
Okay.
As I wrap up, there are some things I would like to share with you. I do have a website for this podcast. It is called livingwithnld.com. I also have a Facebook and Instagram page for this podcast. It is called Living with NLD. I will include the links for those in the description. In conclusion, I would like to hear from my audience. If you know individuals with NLD that I could interview for this podcast, please email me at livingwithnld@gmail.com. What are you interested in learning about NLD? I know I'm not an expert, but I do know I have the living experience of having it. I would like you to practice journaling about your gifts and differences. Also, see if there is a way that you can make that difference become easier for you to do than it originally was. Thank you for listening today, and please go to my YouTube channel and subscribe to it. Thank you. Bye. And today I am very excited to announce that BetterHelp is now sponsoring this podcast. I have had 7 years of therapy, so I know it can help change your life if you not only let it, but work on the personal goals that you set with your therapist. Without a healthy mind, being truly happy and at peace is hard. The good news is therapy works. But what is therapy exactly? It's whatever you want it to be. Maybe you're not feeling motivated right now and would like some tools to help. Or maybe you're feeling insecure in relationships at work, not dealing well with stress. Whatever you need, it's time to stop being ashamed of normal human struggles and start feeling better because you deserve to be happy. And now you don't have to worry about finding an in person therapist near you to help. BetterHelp is customized online therapy that offers video, phone, and even live chat sessions with your therapist. So you don't have to see anyone on camera if you don't want to. It's more affordable than in person therapy, and you can start communicating with your therapist in under 48 hours. Join the millions of people who are seeing what online therapy is really about. It's always a good time to invest in yourself because you are the greatest asset. And special offering to listeners of Living with an Invisible Learning Challenge. You can get 10% off your first month of professional therapy at betterhelp.com/. I'll put in the link in the podcast description for you. That's BetterHelp, HELEP. Thanks again to BetterHelp for sponsoring this podcast.